After the combine, it remains clear. The Arizona Cardinals should take an offensive lineman at 16 overall. Let me explain more in depth, okay? Let's discuss.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Cardinals, Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter, Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen, free wherever you get your podcast, and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel, FanDuel.com. Deebo Samuel got traded. Why that's bad for the Cardinals. I'll explain that in the third segment. Trevor Sikkema, good friend of mine, now exploding everywhere. A lead draft analyst over Pro Football Focus, did his post-combine mock, and he has the Cardinals taking an interesting position, interesting player. We'll discuss that. And really, it's not so much about hammering home this idea. It's more rationalizing why, with all of the other issues the Cardinals have, namely on the defensive side of the ball, offensive line should still be the pick at 16. Barring any sort of trades, barring any sort of, whatever it is, say in a vacuum the Cardinals drafted 16, it should be an offensive line. And I'll explain much more in depth, taking the whole segment to do it. And that starts right now. So what do the Cardinals do well? They run the ball well. What do the Cardinals do well? They run play action well. What allows that to happen at a high level? The offensive line. You still with me? Yeah, but pass rush. Yeah, but interior. I know where the deficiencies of this roster are. If you take an offensive lineman at 16, what that does is continues the positive momentum of this offensive line getting incrementally better, looking around the corner to elite status, which is what we saw up until the bye week last year. What that does is allows the rush game to continue to thrive. It allows Kyler Murray more time in the pocket. It allows Kyler Murray less dirty of a jersey at game's end when he gets sacked multiple times. It allows for the entire engine of the Arizona Cardinals to remain fueled. There are about 4 or 5 top offensive linemen in the draft. In Trevor Sikkema's mock draft, he had 3 going before the Cardinals. Like every year, oh no, quarterback's not going to go till 13. Baloney sandwich. 1, 2, 3, 4, or whatever. 1, 3, 4, 5 with Abdul Carter sandwiched in there. It happens every year. Jackson Dart's probably going to go in the first round. Dude, everybody, oh no, it happens every year. Little homage to the last show I did. Isn't it nice the Cardinals don't have to deal with that? For now? Isn't it nice? One more cycle of not having to deal with, are the Cardinals going to trade up and draft a quarterback? Every year, it's quarterback heavy now. So now, the Cardinals looking at 16, where an offensive lineman may have gone top 10 in another draft, but because of the influx of quarterback, people reaching for quarterbacks in the top 5. And then, you got the Arizona wide receiver. Weird things happen. Ashton Genty could go in before the Cardinals. Oh no, he's going to go in the 20s. Weird stuff happens every year, dude. Michael Penix got taken by Atlanta 9 last year, I think, or 8. Everything changes on draft night. So the Cardinals can get a top 10 offensive lineman at 16. Top 10 offensive linemen who work out are hard to come by. And it doesn't matter. This is the interesting part. To me, it doesn't matter if it's a tackle or guard. Sure. You would like a left guard plug and play who's played some center. That would be ideal. I think they should bring back Will Hernandez. Jonah Williams, we'll see what his production is going to be. So if it's a tackle, you can back up Jonah Williams and then inevitably take over as a starter. If you can play guard with some center, you've got spots for that already. It is perfect and primed for the Cardinals to draft an offensive lineman. And then that is, as I say on this show, the set and forget position. You're good. Like, say they draft a tackle and they move over to the right side. You've got your bookends for the next 10 years. How many teams can say that? So while I understand the vitriol behind the pushback, and while I understand, well, just draft a pass rush, draft an interior defensive lineman. I get it. And one player at either of those positions will not change the landscape of that position to a point of impact enough to validate drafting a player there. Offensive line, it will. And you see immediate dividends. Defense is tough, man. Well, he had 10 sacks his rookie year. Yeah, where was he the rest of the time? What do his pressures look like? What's his win rate look like? And while it's the same for the offensive line in some metrics, in some capacity, sacks given up, pressures given up, pancakes, whatever it is, does the quarterback have time or not? It's really what it comes down to. Is the rushing game more effective and efficient this year than it was last year? And while, of course, there is some impact on the actual running back and the quarterback, respectively, in those comparisons, but I'd much rather see the Cardinals double down on a position of strength already to solidify that and know that that's something that you can rely upon every week than draft a pass rusher and hope it works. Because if it doesn't, or if it doesn't right away, the defense is still where they were last year. B.J. Ojulari, we'll see. He should, he's making a full recovery. He's rehabbing now. He should be ready for camp. But we don't know. We've seen him play like 6 games. He's played more than that, but not a lot in his first 2 years. Bilal Nichols and Justin Jones will both be healthy for next season. They're going to add talent on the defensive side of the ball. This is why, for the most impact for 2025, drafting an offensive lineman, bringing in defensive help on the defensive line who's already proven talent, that's the way to move the Cardinals from where they are now to a potential playoff team a lot more quickly. Just is. Now, the Josh Simmons conversation, offensive lineman, played left tackle, beat out the incumbent, I believe, last year. He started at San Diego State and transferred over to Ohio State. He's a fascinating because he went to Ohio State. The Cardinals now are Ohio State West, or it's starting to trend that way. Paris Johnson Jr., Marvin Harris Jr., Justin Fry, offensive line coach, is now the offensive line coach for the Arizona Cardinals. The offensive line coach for Josh Simmons was Justin Fry. So the interesting part about it is, and he plays tackle, so he can move over and play right tackle. The interesting part about this is, and I wasn't necessarily even going to bring his name up, but I looked him up. Led Zierlein, who's a great draft analyst, he's fantastic. He did his comp, and he did his write-up on Josh Simmons after the combine, and his comp is DJ Humphries, which is somewhat serendipitous. If you told me that Josh Simmons would have DJ Humphries' career, would you draft him at 16? Probably not. But DJ Humphries had a very, very solid career for the Arizona Cardinals. He was never top 3. He was never bottom 10. He did have, except for the last year before he got hurt here, he had it. It was 1 year too many. You feel bad for the guy, but he was great in the locker room. He was fantastic. So take that as you wish. I just thought it was fascinating because obviously DJ, 74 for the Cardinals. Trevor Sikkema from Pro Football Focus, who I'll be having on here. I always try to get him on before he goes on vacation, which is well-deserved, and it's usually around this time. So I'm going to try and get him on before. If not, we'll get him on during the summer. He put out his post-combine mock draft where he thinks players will go after talking, watching, everything in between. Interesting position choice for the Cardinals. Now, this is the second person who has mocked this position to the Cardinals. I'll discuss it next. Locked on Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets and do a same-game parlay. This is a fun time to check out the futures for NBA, the NBA championship future. OKC is the favorite, but then you've got a bunch of other teams. Boston's there, Denver's there. The Lakers are surging up after trading for Luka. So if you want to put some cheese in on the NBA, a couple months left, you can get some pretty good odds, and FanDuel's got you covered for that. And right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at a $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right. So listen, the transition from last segment to this segment is one that I just kind of fell into, because here's the thing. While I think offensive line is the right choice at 16, while I think it's the right choice for all the reasons I laid out in the last segment, this is still a draft outside of quarterback, running back, tight end, wide receiver, any other position, safety, any other position. If the Cardinals take it, it makes sense. Interior defensive line, offensive line, linebacker, pass rusher, whether it's a D end or a true edge, outside linebacker, and corner, which is interesting because that's where Trevor Sikkema has the Cardinals going. Trevor Sikkema is the lead draft analyst for Pro Football Focus. He has the Cardinals taking the corner out of Michigan, Will Johnson, which is interesting because just like what I said about the offensive line, you could say the same thing about the cornerback room. It's almost there to being a top 10 cornerback room. It's almost there. And DBs, I guess you throw DBs. Like if you throw Budda Baker, Jalen Thompson, and Dadrian Taylor-Demerson in there, they're a fringe top 10 group right now. Fringe. And you could say, well, you had a pass rusher to make it easier, which is what I've discussed. You had interior defensive line that collapsed the pocket from the A gap. That's a plus. Helps the DBs. Or if you draft one of the top corners in the draft, then you're looking at a no-fly zone situation. You're looking at a group on defense that could mask the weakness of a pass rush. Or you could look at it as you draft a corner at 16, you bring in Joshua or whoever. You bring in an interior defensive line, you bring in a pass rusher, you bring back Kazir White, whatever it is, and you shore up the front. That's a top 10 defense. True top 10 defense. And then you look at the offensive line, you could take an offensive lineman in the second round or third round or bring one in free agency. Alex Kappa just got cut from Cincinnati. Like, you could bring in guys who can play the interior, and you just hope Jonah Williams holds up. And you look at the defense, you're like, oh boy. Those all red jerseys hit a little different when that defense is top 5 fringe top, or top 10 fringe top 5. And then you're cooking. You're cooking because you've got two of the better defensive minds from a coaching perspective. Nick Rallis is a rising star in this league. People don't know his name yet. They will come next coaching cycle if they do what they did with the roster they had last offseason again. And I know it wasn't perfect, but that defense played out of their shoes. And that's what coaching is, elevating talent. So when you see Will Johnson from Michigan, a great defense this year, come in and you pair him with Max Melton and Garrett Williams and Budda and Jalen and Rabbit, I could sign up for that. So while I still think offensive line should be the pick, I could see why people smarter than me, it's not difficult, in the draft space are starting to mock corner as much as interior defensive line to the Cardinals. The one thing that's kind of cooled is edge rusher there. It's such a deep class. You can get, like, if Monty wants to get frisky, you can trade up in the second round and grab somebody. What we've learned, without a shadow of a doubt, from this, front office staff is they go get their guys, scheme fit guys, skill set fit guys. That's why they traded back and let Cooper DeJean and Kool-Aid McKinstry and Kamari Lassiter go and took Max Melton. He fit what they wanted to do. They're in this for the long haul with Jonathan Gannon. And you know who gave Max Melton a rousing review? Marvin Harrison Jr., who went up against him in the Big Ten. So while I know, looking at, oh my God, the defensive line was terrible last year with injury and otherwise. Take a guy there. I get it. It makes sense. Oh, the pass rush was non-existent. Take a guy there. I get it. Makes sense. And one rookie next season will not be able to bring back from the doldrums that pass rush or the interior defensive line to the point where it rationalizes taking a guy like that at 16, because the Cardinals don't have a 2026 to figure things out. This is it. It's bigger than just the defensive line. It's the face of the franchise. It's the future. It's everything. So I understand the rationale. Taking a pass rusher or an interior defensive lineman. I get it. I also think it would behoove the Cardinals much more impactfully to double down on a position group of strength or close to strength, so you know exactly what your calling cards are going to be in 2025. And then you fill in the rest with defensive talent. You fill in the rest with free agent talent. It's pretty simple. We'll see. There's one thing that isn't really a simple conversation, and it doesn't have a huge impact on the Cardinals. But Deebo Samuel getting traded from the 49ers is bad for the Cardinals. And I'll explain why next. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. Woo! There's no off season, no days off. This is awesome. Less than 2 months away from the draft. Like, it's coming. This is going to be so fun. We're like 2 weeks away from free agency. This is going to be so fun. This is going to be so fun because, it's going to open up, obviously, when free agency is in full swing, it's going to open up actually what the Cardinals draft plan is going to be. This is all, obviously this is all speculative. That's what all this is. Unless, I put on my Clan Stradamus hat on, it's not the same. Deebo Samuel gets traded to the Washington Commanders for a 5th-round pick. Now, I said that Matthew Stafford signing a contract extension with the Rams was good for the Cardinals. And then people decided to spew all the record up until this point that Matthew Stafford had against the Cardinals. That's not even close to what I meant about Matthew Stafford staying with the Rams as being good for the Cardinals. Oh, well, Kyler Murray makes that much money. Matthew Stafford has his... I wish people would think about maybe it's something bigger than what the past was and comparing it to Kyler Murray, which had nothing to do with the conversation. Matthew Stafford eating up that much capital on the salary cap, even though they're young on defense, so they're all in pretty much rookie contracts. It's good for the Cardinals because they can't spend money elsewhere. And I know the salary cap went up. I'm aware of all of this. Matthew Stafford isn't going to get more nimble and better. He's going to regress. So the fact that you have a guy like that in the division, oh, they beat him forever. That's not anymore. We're talking about the future. Like, I try, man. to be rational. It's difficult sometimes. Now, with Deebo Samuel, it's bad for the Cardinals for a very specific reason. It's a little convoluted, but it's specific. Bear with me. The 49ers have overvalued Deebo Samuel ever since they drafted him. Okay. He had a wild year a couple years ago where he showed his true strengths and he showed the true potential of what he is. Okay. I know they're going to have a dead cap hit, but it was always better for the opposition when playing the 49ers when Deebo Samuel was healthy because they had to force feed him the ball, and it was totally not organic. Like, they had to validate why they gave him that contract extension. They had to try, and listen, he had some eye-popping plays last year. Eye-popping. But he doesn't, like, I don't understand. I feel like it's an evil joke. Like, people talk about him like he's all pro. He's not. But what was always good for the opposition was that they had to force him the ball, little handoffs, end arounds, getting him the ball in space. Like, it wasn't organic. And that was great because they had to figure it out. And it wasn't just Kyle Shanahan in flow state, just picking teams apart. So the fact that Deebo's not on the 49ers, that's better for them. It's addition by subtraction for sure. They got Ricky Pearsall, who looked incredible from the last couple of weeks, even though they were, eliminated from the playoffs. He had a couple really good games late. Brandon Ayuk will be back. George Kittle, it's like there's more space on the field now. I'm sure they'll draft a receiver. But that's bad for the Cardinals because that element actually helped opposing teams when he was on the field. And that's not taking away anything from Deebo. Like, the dude produces just on, like, reputation alone. And yes, he's at flash times has been out of this world. And he had a good year a couple years ago. But with how that roster is currently constructed, I wish that they found a way to keep him because it benefited the Cardinals and opposing teams. Just because it didn't seem like he fit any specific spot on that team. I think he'll be great in Washington. Imagine using the Andy Isabella package for a guy like Deebo Samuel. Locked on Cardinals, your team every day. Remember, without you, there is no me. I believe I'm going to restart the How to Fix the Cardinals series. I'm going to kick it off with offensive line and defensive line in one show later this week, and then we'll finish it out. But until then, I will talk to you tomorrow. Remember, without you, there is no me. Bye.